Every so often, we drop in on the folks who inspired Post Select cereals, and we never show up empty-handed.
This is the best of the Post Select.
It's our favorite, too.
How can you go wrong with a cereal that tastes like my banana nut bread?
It's the best one we made.
Hey, y'all didn't bring any milk, did you? You know what part I like best?
Blueberry.
Blueberry.
Which of the Post Selects do we like the best?
You know what's my favorite?
It's our favorite, too.
The one we're eating at the time.
It's the 40th anniversary of Christmas Village. Nashville's favorite shopping tradition is coming to the Tennessee State Fairgrounds November 10th through 12th. Over 250 merchants will be on hand with decorating ideas, toys, wreaths, crafts, even holiday clothing. Celebrate Pi Beta Phi's 40th annual Christmas Village, benefiting the Vanderbilt Bill Wilkerson Center for Hearing and Speech. Tickets are $5 in advance at NBC Bank inside Kroger or $6 at the door. Christmas Village, November 10th through 12th at the Tennessee State Fairgrounds.
Start your mornings with Victoria Hansen, only on News 2. First, fast, accurate. News 2's coverage of the 2000 vote continues now.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for staying up late with us as we continue our coverage of the 2000 vote. It is 1 o'clock in the morning, and you are watching History in the Making, the closest presidential race in more than 40 years. Let's go down to News 2's Chris Bungard at the Gore campaign headquarters out in the rain. Chris, I've been watching the Florida returns. Over 5 million people voting. The difference right now, 20,000 votes.
Well, you know, it's the whole world is watching what's going on in Florida, and I think there's a little bit of weariness in everybody right now. It's the calm before whatever happens. It's very hard to say whether we'll know within an hour or so. We're hearing some word, just a rumor at this point, that Mr. Gore could be coming over here at some point. But, of course, we don't really know these things. It's just, a little murmur here, a little murmur there. But everybody out here has put up their umbrella. The crowd is thinned out probably, maybe by a third or so. And if there's those who don't have umbrellas, but luckily we have them here. I would say that I'm just taking a guess now. Maybe I'm being bold at 1:15 in the morning, but I'm saying that within the next hour or so, we'll probably know.
All right, Chris, I appreciate it. Let's go down to Austin, Texas, where News 2's Jay Korf is also out in the rain in Texas. Jay?
Well, Bob, similar to the situation back there in Nashville and Music City, this crowd is also thinned out a little bit. You could just take a look behind me. I would imagine it was because a major thunderstorm rolled through here about maybe 45 minutes ago. The partying is still going on. They, of course, are primed for victory. They are ready to explode. And we have heard, we haven't gotten this confirmed, but whether this race has been called or not, it's our understanding that Governor George Bush may come out within maybe 5-10 minutes and make some kind of a speech to the folks that are still here. There's got to still be several thousand folks here, but at this point, I'd say maybe about a quarter of the crowd have left. They're still very excited. They are thrilled. They cannot wait to hear those words that the governor of Texas is the president of the United States, the commander-in-chief, the most powerful man in the world. But for now, it's still a wait-and-see game. And just on a personal note, Bob, just want to say, if you don't happen to come back out to me, watching history unfold out here in Austin certainly has been an incredible experience.
I think it has been for all of us, Jay. And right now, as you're talking, there's 30,000 vote difference in Florida, which will probably decide this election. As you said, there's a rumor that the governor may come out and talk to folks, even if it wasn't a victory or a concession speech, maybe just to address the crowd.
Well, this crowd certainly has been waiting a terribly long time out in miserable weather, cold and rainy, and we have heard that he may come out to at least say something to this crowd, because who knows when this race is going to be called.
It would be very gracious. Thanks, Jay. That'll do it for here in Nashville for this time. We will come back as things update here. Let's go back to ABC News and their coverage of the 2000 vote. Peter Jennings in New York. 5 states still remaining before this one will be called.
Okay, back to George Stephanopoulos. I don't think we quite finished discussing on Florida there. The Jewish vote loomed very large in Florida from the very beginning, and particularly when it was the Jewish elderly. Many from the East Coast particularly retire down there.
That's right. But, when you look at a separate section of the Florida vote so far, the elderly over 60 and over 65, and there are a lot of Jewish voters in the condos around Miami and Fort Lauderdale. Bush is actually winning those 50 to 48 or 52 to 46. They're just looking at it right now. So Al Gore, despite the talk about Social Security, despite Joe Lieberman on the ticket, may not have done as well with that elderly population as he expected.
Which is also a surprise because Mr. Bush felt obliged to go into Florida on any number of occasions and refer to Mediscare, which he regarded as Mr. Gore's tactics on Medicare and Social Security.
Absolutely, and the Florida Senate candidate, Bill McCollum, as we talked about earlier, advertised on the side of Mr. Gore as well, on the lockbox.
So help me with another piece of Florida. We did, I think, see earlier in the evening along that I-4 corridor across the middle of the state from the west coast to the east that a lot of independent voters, a lot of younger voters had made themselves heard. Does that mean they may make the difference this evening?
Well, they very well could. A lot of new voters into Florida, the ones who came from the north down into that I-4 corridor, and they were especially moved by how well the economy was doing over this year. But you have to take a step back here, Peter. The fact that Florida is this close for a Democrat, Al Gore, this late in the night is pretty remarkable.
Very good point. Let's go to the Senate and Sam Donaldson. Sam.
Well, Peter, in 4 states, the voters are making it very tough for us. I mean, these races are just too close to call. Let's take a look at the states, however. In Missouri, John Ashcroft, the incumbent Republican senator, of course, on the other line, a man who's no longer living. The Governor Mel Carnahan, his name's on the line. We can't call this one yet. In Michigan, the incumbent Republican senator Spencer Abraham, hard-pressed by his Democratic challenger, Congresswoman Debbie Stabenow. In Nebraska, this is an open seat. Bob Kerrey, the Democratic senator, is retiring voluntarily. Attorney General Don Stenberg, the GOP candidate, facing a former 2-term governor, Ben Nelson, on the Democratic line. And in Washington State, the incumbent Senator Slade Gorton, a Republican, being hard-pressed by former Representative Maria Cantwell. She used to be in the House of Representatives. And we just can't call these races, Peter. But let's take a look at some of the switches tonight, races we've already called. ABC News has projected that George Allen has defeated Chuck Robb in Virginia. Robb, the Democratic senator, out. In Nevada, we project that John Ensign has beaten Ed Bernstein. That was an open seat to Richard Bryan, a Democratic senator in Nevada, was retiring. And in Delaware, Tom Carper, the governor, we believe, has defeated Bill Roth. Those of you who have Roth IRAs, that was the guy. He's out. And let's go back to Missouri, because I understand we can now make a call. In Missouri, ABC News projects that the deceased governor has won the most votes. He will have won the most votes. Mel Carnahan, his line is there. He, of course, is deceased. He died in an airplane crash 3 weeks ago. We believe has defeated John Ashcroft. Now, Peter, here's what's going to happen in Missouri then. We already know that the new governor has said he will appoint Mel Carnahan's widow, Jean Carnahan, to the United States Senate. That's perfectly legal under Missouri law. But hold it. This could get very tough. The Senate is the sole judge of the qualifications of its members. And the Constitution says that the person elected to the House or Senate must be an inhabitant of the state from which they come. Now, the question will be, and I'll bet it goes to the courts first, is a dead man, he won, an inhabitant of the state? This may be dancing on the head of a pin, but I will just bet you that Jean Carnahan is not going to sail right into the Senate without a lot of people taking a look at this.
Sam, one of the few interviews that Mrs. Carnahan gave, and it cannot have been easy, was to Cokie Roberts. Cokie, have you any idea how Mrs. Carnahan intends to express herself on this issue?
How express herself on the question of...
On whether or not she would actively take the seat?
Oh, she expects to actively take the seat. The governor, the acting governor, the former lieutenant governor, who's now the governor, has said that he would appoint her to the seat. And she expects to take the seat come January. And she says that she would fulfill the same missions that her husband, Mel Carnahan, had in mind, that she agrees with him on all the major issues. And he was very similar to Al Gore on all the major issues. She says she'd also take on some women's issues, breast cancer, domestic violence, things that she's paid attention to as the First Lady of Missouri. But this question of a challenge is a real one. Now, there have been lots of challenges to House and Senate seats over the years. They tend to be political rather than legal. And this one is likely to be the same, depending on how many seats the Republicans end up with in the Senate.
Well, Cokie, it was certainly going to be an issue if the Senate ended up even. Can I just stop for a second to hear what Mrs. Carnahan herself said to you on the subject of a challenge?
I can't really believe that anyone would attempt to thwart the will of the Missouri voters. If they vote and say they want to continue the ideals and the things that my husband stood for, and they know that the Governor Wilson will appoint me to carry that out, I just can't believe that someone would attempt to thwart that.
One more thought, Cokie?
Well, of course, that was in the middle of the political campaign, and she needed to get that message out because she was being the newspapers were saying, don't vote for Carnahan because it will cause a legal wrangle. She needed to say, no, it won't. We'll see. It is a little bit unseemly for the Republicans to decide that they want to take on the widow lady, and it doesn't really help their image with women, where they've had a problem. If you look in seat after seat in these Senate races tonight, the Democrats who won did it with the women's vote.
And since when were politicians afraid of being unseemly? The other thing, it was very difficult for Senator Ashcroft there to campaign in the states after Governor Carnahan was killed. And much of the state was caught up, apparently, in this notion of keep the fires burning, which was the slogan that the Carnahan people, and he's a very popular governor in the state, the Carnahan people took up, keep the fires burning, and at least by our projection, he now has. Lynn Scher on a Missouri item.
Peter, we can tell you that to a great extent, Mrs. Carnahan's victory, or the victory of her late husband, which she will inherit, is largely due to the gender gap. Men tended to vote for Mr. Ashcroft, 54-45. That's a 9-point difference. Women voted for Mr. Carnahan or Mrs. Carnahan, 52-47, 5 points. That's a 14-point gender gap, a big factor in that victory. Peter?
Thanks very much, Lynn and Cokie. Just one thing to remember about the Florida race, which is so close now, 30,000 votes between them. If the Florida race is within 0.5%, the state law calls for an automatic recount. So we can put aside, based on the numbers we have so far, the notion of a legal challenge, Mark Halperin, because state law calls for an automatic recount if it ends up tonight within 0.5%. We'll be right back.
The 2000 vote ABC News live coverage will continue in a moment.
Individually, they are standouts in their respect. This is a national sales alert from Dodge. Effective immediately for 5 full years. Get 0 APR on 2000 Dodge Stratus and Intrepid, 0.9 APR on 2000 Dodge Dakota and Durango, and 4.9 APR on select all-new 2001 Dodge Caravans. See your Dodge dealer immediately, as 60-month financing can save you over $5,600. See the friendly Dodge dealer near you.
Are you ready to see yourself as others see you? I didn't know I was so gray. Now escape that old gray look with new Just for Men. More than a hair color, it's the Rejuvenator. Just for Men shampoos away gray in 5 easy minutes, and now has vitamins. It brings back a thicker, healthier look that's completely natural.
I like what I see.
Just for Men. More than a hair color, it's the Rejuvenator.
This isn't one of those coffees you sit and sip as the world passes you by. Introducing new Folgers Cafe Latte. Delicious coffeehouse-style taste sensations. They're richer, coffeeier, and frothier than the other guy. So it's not the coffee you drink to take a break from your day. It's the coffee you drink to break into it. New Folgers Cafe Latte.
ABC this Wednesday is a great night of television when this woman gets to the top.
$1 million.
On Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Then the Drew Carey Show is coming to you
5 seconds, Drew.
live
I better get into my costume.
and on Spin City.
You want a piece of me?
Charlie Sheen gets the fastest finger from Regis Philbin.
Afraid you might get your dress dirty, Alice? Huh?
Then, before you see a doctor,
Did you care about this patient? Yes. Then why don't you fight for him?
see this Gideon's Crossing. ABC Wednesday, a great night of television.
They now are the #1 team in the country.
Oklahoma, Texas A&M, or Purdue, Michigan State, Saturday on ABC.
ABC News live coverage continues from New York. Once again, Peter Jennings.
Oregon, Iowa, Wisconsin, Florida. Florida is the big thing now because pretty much now whoever wins Florida, the other man's got to win them all. But if one man wins another, then Florida's going to make the absolute difference. But here's what the popular vote looks in Florida with Mr. Nader and Mr. Buchanan included now, with 96% of the precincts reporting. By the way, I just want to remind you, if we get to 100% of precincts reporting, I'll remind you again, this simply means that the precincts have all reported in. It does not mean that the vote has been counted or tabulated. But currently, 48% for Mr. Gore, Mr. Bush just up a touch there, 49%, 2% for Mr. Nader. The assumption is that he has taken those votes from Mr. Gore. On the other hand, they might be people who wouldn't vote otherwise. And Pat Buchanan, who we said earlier this evening was toast, which may have been too glib, but has certainly seen his career as a campaigning politician pretty much obliterated this year, has 16,120 votes with 96% of the precincts reporting. And as the two men are only 30,000 votes apart at this moment, you can see that Mr. Buchanan's importance suddenly looms larger than it has at any previous moment in the entire evening. On the phone with us from Miami at the moment is the managing editor of the Miami Herald, Larry Olmsted. Mr. Olmsted, I remember several times in the last little while where we've said that newspapers are going to have to push their deadlines back. You might as almost, well, not go to the streets tonight.
Yeah, right now we have, in fact, begun our press run. We have a headline that describes the race as too close to call, but also in that that lead headline on page 1 indicates that Governor Bush is clinging to a narrow lead here in Florida.
Right. Now, what's your impressions of the evening down there? Because everybody's been fixated on Florida in a way that even you in the Sunshine State don't usually get.
Yes, we knew all along that Florida was going to be a key battleground for the presidential race. And both candidates, of course, have telegraphed that by spending quite a bit of time here. Joe Lieberman also, on behalf of Al Gore and himself, has spent probably the most time in Miami-Dade and Broward counties. So we knew it was going to be a close race, and I have to say this focus has maybe even outstripped our own predictions.
Now, I realize that, we're all looking at minuscule numbers in terms of the exit poll percentages, but ours show that Mr. Lieberman may not have made the difference in Florida that perhaps the Gore campaign wanted him to make. Do you have the same impression?
I think my feeling is that the Democrats chose a strategy of making sure voters in the vote-rich parts of the state, and especially here in South Florida, knew that they cared, and that Mr. Lieberman was able to do a good job of being part of the energizing of the Democratic constituency here in Broward and Dade counties. Huge turnout among Jewish voters, huge turnout among black voters, and to the extent that Gore is still in the race here in Florida, I think that that has a lot to do with it.
Do you estimate that turnout throughout the state is higher, lower, just about the same as 4 years ago?
I haven't looked at the overall state figures yet, but in South Florida, we're talking about voter turnout in Miami-Dade County of upwards of 75-80%, which is certainly far higher than 4 years ago, and we think that that's going to be the case all around.
Now, as you've listened to us all this evening, if you've had any time, what are we missing about Florida at this point in terms of insight?
I think a couple of things that are important about Florida. One is that this is a state where not only do we have the close presidential race, but we've had several other hotly contested races. Our U.S. Senate race, which was won by Bill Nelson, was a very tight race. We have a heck of a congressional race going on in South Florida with Clay Shaw, the incumbent, really in the fight of his political career against Elaine Bloom, and Ms. Bloom looks like she has, again, the very narrowest leads in a race that's too close to call, a seat that could go Democratic. We have a very hotly contested state attorney's race in Miami-Dade County, and all these are issues that are key. I also think we have a very popular governor in Jeb Bush, but it's also a state where there's a lot of controversy over various state issues, including affirmative action.
Let me just ask you one more question on that then, because we don't get any sense here, but again, it's hard to tell when it's this close, as to whether or not Mr. Bush did what was required of him, or what degree of what was required of him he did.
I think that's going to be the topic of a lot of discussion and speculation. I think that our governor, Governor Jeb Bush, was certainly very supportive of his brother's candidacy. There seemed to be a point where the Republican message kind of got a little bit sidetracked, shall we say. This was a state that everybody just kind of started assuming was just going to go Republican, and I think maybe the Republicans got caught a little bit surprised by the amount of fervor that the Gore camp put in and the amount of energy that they put in this state.
Well, I appreciate you taking time. Save an addition for us, will you? Nobody's made the 1948 mistake yet.
Well, we don't plan to do that. We plan to have a very solid paper for our readers tomorrow.
It's a very solid newspaper, so thank you very much for taking the time, Larry Olmsted, who's the managing editor of the Miami Herald. Now, I want to go briefly now to the director of ABC's polling unit, the normally camera-shy Gary Langer, in fact, making his first appearance of the evening, to explain the Nader vote in Florida as best you can.
Peter, this is the kind of math people can do around this election. If you take the Nader vote, currently around 90,000 votes in Florida, 1.7%, and you apportion it the way it splits nationally, that is 47% from Gore, 21% from Bush, and 30% wouldn't have voted, and you apply it to the Bush and Gore vote in Florida, you find that George W. Bush is still ahead in Florida by about 5,000 votes out of 5.5 million cast.
Stop, Gary, I apologize. We're going to make a projection now. ABC News is now going to project that Florida goes to Mr. Bush. Just stop and absorb that for a second. We put it up on the map. ABC News projects that Florida is going to go for Mr. Bush. The 25 electoral votes to Mr. Bush. Take a look at it. That takes Mr. Bush, by our projections, to 271. Unless there is a terrible calamity, George W. Bush, by our projections, is going to be the next president of the United States. All this talk about Florida, bringing it right down to the wire, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 votes between them. That's what it looks like in Austin at the moment. I'm not sure exactly what they're responding to, but I think they may not have had the news of this projection. But ABC News now projects, our unit tells us that Florida is going to go to Mr. Bush, George Stephanopoulos.
Well, Peter, a huge, huge win. He pulled it out at the last second. I have to believe, you're hearing the noise in Austin. Imagine the sounds in Nashville right now. A few hours ago, they thought that Florida had been called for them, and now it's taken away. But what we're also seeing here, Peter, is an even closer electoral college finish than we saw back in 1976 when Gerald Ford got 240 electoral votes against Jimmy Carter. Al Gore gets 242, but it does look like, if our projections are correct, as you said, George W. Bush is the next president.
Well, that's a very tough call this very late in the day. It's 20 minutes after 2. Florida said they were going to count to 2:30 and beyond. If somebody please put up the popular vote for me in Florida, we'll see exactly how many precincts are reporting. The popular vote for Florida, please. We'll see how many precincts are actually reporting so that we know how much of the vote we have. That's the popular vote nationwide. I'd love to see the popular vote in Florida, because it's Florida we want to key on at this moment now, with 97% of the precincts reporting. That doesn't mean the vote is completely called. That does not mean there will not be a challenge. That does not mean that the absentee ballots have yet to be considered, and I'm not quite sure how our polling unit actually considered them, but we may want to ask them that in just a moment. But by our projection, Mr. Bush wins, and it'll be
First, fast, accurate. News 2's coverage of the 2000 vote continues now.
You're looking live at the party in Austin, Texas. ABC News, as well as the other major networks, have projected that George W. Bush will be the 43rd president of the United States. Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to our local coverage of the 2000 vote. Let's go right to Austin, Texas. News 2's Jay Korf. And Jay, they must be partying wildly.
Well, Bob, whatever title you want to use, whatever moniker, the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, the leader of the free world, or the most powerful man in the world, that title now appears to go to Governor George W. Bush. If we can zoom in to the stage area, you can see that there are still a few loyal 1,000 fans that have remained here around the Capitol in Austin, Texas. The crowd thinned out considerably over the last hour or so because of the terrible rain, and this crowd cannot contain itself. They've been waiting through this miserable weather, and now finally there is jubilation. You see people hugging and kissing, embracing, running around on the streets in just utter joy. Just to give you a sense as the kind of president that this country is now going to have, he is a delegator who relies heavily on advisors. He tends to set few priorities, but in the state of Texas, he has accomplished most of what he has wanted to do. He takes pride in being able to work with both Democrats and Republicans, and he is very well known for surrounding himself with extremely competent aides and advisors. Very Reagan-esque, if you will. He has been both praised and criticized for his leadership style. We will certainly see how successful that style will be in the Congress. Some things that you can expect, at least what the Bush campaigned about on the trail, was a tax cut, increasing the military budget, being able to take a portion of Social Security and being able to invest that for yourself. Those are just a few of the many issues that Governor Bush campaigned on. One of the real keys will be how will he be able to get that agenda out with Congress being so tight. He certainly does not have a clear one way or the other, Republican or Democrat, even though the Republicans still control the Congress. Again, as we turn around, we are expecting, I would imagine momentarily, for Governor Bush to come out and to make some remarks to the few thousand loyal Bush backers that remain. If there's anything else that we can bring to you, we certainly will. Back to you, Bob.
Jay, what kind of roller coaster ride was it out there tonight? That's Jay
It would be an understatement, Bob, to even try to quantify that. I mean, literally 1/2 hour, these thousands would be down in the dumps. The next, they would be joyous and screaming wildly. And for a time, I think that people didn't even think that this race would even be decided, possibly until tomorrow, with Florida being so close. I'm trying to look back and see right now if Governor Bush is going to come to the podium soon. I don't believe he is. What they're doing right now is they're playing a video. This video has been played a couple of times this evening. Shows Bush on the campaign trail, positive, confident, as he has been so much in the last week. You could really see a turn, Bob, in the last week, I would say, especially in the last few days before the election. Bush really became a strong campaigner. A lot of his aides even admitted that he wasn't a very good campaigner, but he really had a confidence that burned into a lot of the folks that he talked to around the country.
They are partying in Austin. We'll check back in with you a little bit later. Thanks, Jay. Back here in Nashville, Tennessee, Republicans are partying down at the Wild Horse Saloon. News 2's Dan McDonald is down there. Dan?
To put it mildly, Bob, they're going nuts down here. Let me show you what we've got going on here. They made the announcement on ABC News just a couple minutes ago. They made the pronouncement on Fox a little bit earlier in the evening, maybe a minute before that, and this place has been going nuts ever since. Some of the chants have been no more Gore, no more Gore. Of course, they feel terrific here about the fact that George W. Bush carried Al Gore's home state of Tennessee, but they feel even much better about the fact that George W. Bush is the next president of the United States. And I'll tell you what, I have never seen and heard so many Tennessee fans rooting for Florida. And man, when they called Florida for Bush, this place was up for grabs. The chant they've been doing now has been who let the Bush out, and they've been doing that woof woof thing. So they're having a great time. They're obviously very, very happy and relieved.
Dan, as you know, the Republicans here in Tennessee worked hard. They really got a big get-out-the-vote campaign. There were bus trips all across East Tennessee trying to get the base organized. They wanted to roll that vote over the middle into the Cumberland area. They carried Tennessee, so it worked effectively for them.
It was a textbook campaign, Bob, and anyone that's looked at it will tell you objectively they did a terrific job. of energizing their base and energizing people not only to vote for George W. Bush, but really to vote against Al Gore. They really made him out to be a Washington person, not a Tennessee person. It was very effective. They also tarred him with the Clinton legacy, and that didn't play well here in the Bible Belt.
Enjoy the party. We're going to head over to where it's a little bit quieter right now. News 2's Chris Bungard is over at Legislative Plaza, where the Gore campaign has been all evening. The rain was there earlier. It has stopped, but I bet it's quiet up there now, Chris.
Well, it's stark contrast to what happened at the Wild Horse, and of course in Austin, the only music you're going to hear right now is canned music. I think they're digging into the old CDs. We got Bob Seger playing right now. We just heard a voice come over the loudspeaker and say that Alan Tipper Gore will be here in 20 minutes. So let's say in about a half an hour, given the wet roads, and you know how campaigns go. So we're expecting to see Al and Tipper Gore here, making his concession speech probably within the next half an hour. Bob?
Chris, now that this has been projected, there's going to be a lot of what-ifs, second guesses, especially on the Democratic side. Questions about should President Clinton have campaigned more? Should Mr. Gore maybe have looked at that debate, the first debate? Did that kill him? The environment, two of his biggest issues. He was supposed to be a great debater, and the environment may have ended up costing this election.
Well, I think in some of the conversation we've heard all night long from some of the commentators, it's almost better for a campaign to lose, by not a landslide, but a decisive loss, because then something like this, they're going to look back and go, boy, if we'd have done this, like you mentioned, would President Clinton have helped Mr. Gore? Obviously, Mr. Gore lost his home state of Tennessee, and that was really, I think people look back and go, that was the real turning point, because up to that point, it looked like the momentum was with Mr. Gore, Rob.
Chris, we're looking at some of the pictures in Austin, Texas. I asked the vice president earlier tonight if he was prepared for defeat. He said he was not, that he had not thought about that. What does this do to his career?
Well, I heard something I hadn't even thought about earlier tonight. There was somebody talking about a Governor Al Gore, perhaps, in the year 2002. Now, of course, I think what will happen with Mr. Gore is he's going to finish out being vice president. He has about 2.5 months in that. And then, of course, I think he's going to take a very long vacation, and who knows?
I think you're right, Chris. We'll check back with you a little bit later. Let's go back now to ABC News. Peter Jennings, as they continuing coverage of the 2000 vote.
From the creators of Breakfast at Midnight and the producers of A Family Tradition comes a holiday tale
They are the reason, part of the reason, that Al Gore was competitive there.
Okay, Michelle, thank you very much. Also ask you, please don't go away. Want to go to the White House, where ABC's John Cochran has spent the evening. John, you alluded a little earlier in the evening to the fact that the second guessing would begin very quickly. Why not start it?
All right, you will hear from the Clinton people, the Clinton White House people, speaking on background, of course, unnamed sources. They'll be saying that Bill Clinton should have been called for much more in this campaign. He should have been sent out to states like some of the battlegrounds. The 200th anniversary party for the White House. The White House hasn't existed that long. And on the guest list that night, former President George Bush and his wife, two other former presidents, Gerald Ford and his wife, and Jimmy Carter and his wife. Vice President Gore will be there. Young George Bush will not be there. Wouldn't you like to be a fly on the wall at that dinner? A lot of hurt feelings that night. It'll be interesting to know the relations between the Bushes and the Gores and the Clintons. My invitation was lost in the mail, but Michael Beschloss did get his invitation, so we'll be talking to him about that.
Thank you very much, John. That just killed your bit. We're going to go straight away to ABC's Michael Beschloss, because, Michael, on an occasion like this, I know that we asked you to give some thoughts to concession speeches, and you made the point to us earlier in the week that they're very much a factor of the television age.
That's right, because, before the television age, Peter, we weren't in a situation where we expected the loser to sort of close off the suspense of the evening by saying, I now renounce the possibility that I might win the presidency. It's very much incumbent on the loser now to do that. That's something that Al Gore is going to have to think very hard about. And I remember what George Stephanopoulos said just a little while ago when Richard Nixon met his supporters early in the morning in November of 1960, and he said, if this trend does continue, Senator Kennedy will be our next president. His supporters were irate, and they screamed at him, and they said, no, get him out of here. Kennedy watched in Hyannisport. He said, Nixon didn't concede, and I wouldn't under these circumstances either. But this is a very different situation tonight.
It's the age, the television age insists, I guess, Michael, that we want a capstone on the end of great events like this.
It does, and this evening calls for that more than anything else because of the ambiguity. Just think of it, Peter. This is an evening I never thought I would ever live to see in my lifetime. A few hours ago, we were looking at George W. Bush as possibly politically dead, brought back from political death, and now presumably the next president of the United States. Al Gore has had to cope with all of that emotionally in the space of a couple of hours, and now has to make this very tough decision. Does he want to open the possibility of a recount, or does he want to concede that George W. Bush will indeed be president?
You want to make a guess?
My guess would be that I think I heard, I hate to keep on quoting George, but I think it makes so much sense. This is something that he probably will have to sleep on tonight.
Very interesting. So you think we might not get a concession speech from him? He'll want to reconsider it, or he'll want to consider it at least until the morning.
I think that's a possibility, but we're all guessing.
Okay, you're quite right. We're all guessing. But, George, he does make one very good point, as Michael Beschloss. You've had something interesting to say on every subject that we have brought up this evening, and we're very grateful for that. But let's talk a little bit about Al Gore. A life in politics, unlike many, if any, modern American politicians, and he almost instantly may become a tragic figure.
That's right, and about as well prepared for the presidency as any man ever. Years in the House and the Senate, and 8 years as vice president, by all accounts, one of the most active vice presidents in American history, loses by a hangnail in Florida at the last minute in a time of great peace and prosperity, the only vice president to have to run after the president that chose him was impeached. He must feel star-crossed this evening as he considers what to say.
I think star-crossed is a phrase many people will use many times, but I'd argue something else with you. He didn't, in one respect, lose by a hair, grant you he did, but he had such a head start going in with the economy. Things are tough. Things are so good, it's time to make a change, was a pretty pitiful plea from the Republicans early on.
Absolute, Peter, and all the academic forecasters that we looked at were forecasting a big Al Gore landslide. On the other hand, said just a second ago, he is the first vice president to run after his mentor was impeached. And there is a little bit of a hint in some of our polling tonight over how that might have affected Al Gore as well. Among the voters who approved of President Clinton's job performance and approved of him personally, Al Gore won those voters 85-12. They were 35% of the electorate. Of those who approved of President Clinton's job performance but disapproved of him personally, they were 20% of the electorate. Al Gore won them only 63-33, a 20-point difference. So he was at some level, and I think his partisans will argue back to President Clinton's, that he was burdened by the Clinton legacy.
So hearken back, Mark Halperin, our political director, for us for a moment, to some of the phraseology that we heard throughout the campaign. When was the first phraseology we heard from George Bush that began to call these issues into character about Mr. Gore?
Well, I think obviously his main slogan, compassionate conservative, but the signature line of every major George Bush stump speech this year was he would raise his right hand, he would simulate taking the oath.
Exactly.
And what they did very cleverly was they knew that a lot of what people didn't like about the Republican Party in Washington was the negative attacks, the Clinton scandal investigations on Capitol Hill. So they did a very good job of raising those issues without directly raising them in such a way that people could say this is all George Bush is running on. And they struck a very clever balance the whole way.
Koki, what's your estimation of what Mr. Gore will do now?
It's very hard to know. He's been in public life for 24 years and started very young and really has been building toward this really his whole life. As you've all seen the biographies over the last few months, this is what his family groomed him to do. So he's going to have to take a big, deep breath and figure it out. He has a very fine mind. He's likely to do some teaching, do some writing, do some reading, but figuring out the next job is going to be very tough.
Okay, well, probably one of the people who can give us a greater insight into the Gore state of mind at this time of night is the Reverend Jesse Jackson, who's been very close to Mr. Gore's campaign, though we haven't seen Mr. Jackson a lot in the media in this election as we have in other cycles. Mr. Jackson, have you talked to the family tonight? Can you give us a sense of what's going on around the family?
Well, not tonight, but there's a lot of pain. I probably worked more in this campaign than any other I made almost 300 appearances since August up until October 17th, voter registration, and then since that time until tonight, voter turnout. And much of our focus on the African-American vote and the labor vote was successful, but in the end, it was not enough.
I didn't mean to imply that you actually weren't working for the ticket this year. I hope you understand that. But what do you think actually made the difference in terms of the national campaign?
I think in the end, the Bush forces were able to, as it were, fuzzy up the ideological distinction that we're going to see come January. When you look at the Bush, Cheney, Strom Thurmond, Jesse Helms, Orrin Hatch line, they're right down the line, the states' rights and right to work and anti-affirmative action, anti-women's choice, anti-consumer advocate lawsuits. You're going to see a very intense ideological line. Even the Supreme Court, the idea of strict constructionism and exalting Thomas Scalia, the ramifications of the Bush-Cheney ideology and the Supreme Court will have a huge impact upon our country come January. We've got to see how this plays out.
Mr. Jackson, you know as well as anybody in the country how quickly political minds have to adjust. So let's assume, which is not particularly hypothetical, that you're going to meet Mr. Bush before long. What are you going to say to him?
Well, of course, I'll respect him as president. Steps to enhance a real bipartisan dialogue in our country on issues that matter, because whoever is president, we must choose stop first-class jails stop first-class jails and second-class schools. Whoever is president, there are 42 million Americans who don't have health insurance. I think issues that matter, health care for all, education for all, African policy, AIDS policy, the criminal justice system. I think these issues that just will not go away must be addressed by any president and Congress. And of course,
I've just one last question then. I apologize because I know I'm about to lose you. Mr. Bush has said repeatedly he wants to bring people together. He's described himself as a compassionate conservative. As of now, do you believe him?
No. And I'm anxious to see him make that, because if he's going to, in fact, attack women's choice and attack affirmative action, if he is inclined to put on that Supreme Court what he calls strict conservative, that's not compassionate. It's divisive and painful. But I think we should be willing to talk about it. But I don't hold out in a great sense of hope, because his line is so clear and, frankly, a very threatening line.
Okay, Mr. Jackson, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. I can tell you've been out trying to get the faithful roused by the sound of your voice. Sam Donaldson, Mr. Jackson brings up something which we haven't talked about tonight, but it's been talked about a lot in the campaign. And with 271 electoral votes, he's now going to have an impact on the Supreme Court that Democrats have warned about.
Well, that's true. Let's take the moment the Democrats have picked up 2 seats in the Senate. They could pick up more. We still have some races undecided. It's going to be very close. The Republicans can retain control, but the Democrats will have a lot of votes there. Now, if George W. Bush puts forward someone like Robert Bork, you'll remember the ill-fated nominee that Ronald Reagan tried to get through, big fight over that. It's not going to get through the Senate. I don't think President Bush, if he becomes President Bush, is going to do that. Now, whether he'll put forward someone that Jesse Jackson likes is another question. He has said, Mr. Bush has, that he's not going to use a litmus test. On the other hand, he has sent the message that he wants conservative judges who will be judges who follow the Constitution, strict constructionists, if you will. But my guess is that his father was one for one. His father put David Souter on the court. His father put very strong, strict constructionists on the court. So I think George W. Bush will probably be somewhere in the middle. He's not going to be the great ogre on the court that Jesse Jackson fears. On the other hand, he was not going to appoint people that Al Gore would have appointed.
Thank you, Sam. Just very quickly before we go away for a very short break, because we're coming back to hear from Mr. Gore and Mr. Bush. The Texas appointments of the Supreme Court have been judged by various people who've looked at them in a fairly independent way as being fairly fair and moderate and respectable judges, which would appeal to both sides.
Absolutely, to be relatively moderate. George W. Bush will be under much more pressure from his base.
Right.
Now that he's been elected president. Remember, the conservatives were quiet through this whole campaign, counting on him. So he's going to owe them a little bit. But my guess is that he wouldn't mind having someone like a David Souter, who his father picked, because probably the worst thing politically for him would be for him to pick a judge on the Supreme Court and then have Roe versus Wade overturned, uproar in the country. He doesn't want that before 2004.
Okay, thanks very much, George. We are waiting for Mr. Gore and we're waiting for Mr. Bush, so we're going to go away for just a minute or two and then we'll be back. Oregon and Iowa and Wisconsin have not been called, but Mr. Bush has 271 electoral votes and Mr. Gore, as of the moment, is at 242.
The 2000 vote. ABC News live coverage will continue in a moment.
I want to tell you about a brand new way.
Brand new way of quitting smoking.
It's unique. It's effective. It's orange.
New Nicorette Orange.
It's Nicorette.
So I still help prevent cravings on my own regular schedule.
I still help answer cravings with another piece. And now I have orange.
Brand new orange flavor. Only from Nicorette.
Here, taste this. Now this just may be a flavor I can quit with.
Sometimes victory's so close.
You can taste it.
You can do it. New Nicorette Orange can help.
Two eager CEOs. One encouraged his employees to read the Wall Street Journal. The other did not. Let's join them for their 5-year anniversaries and see what happened. Imagine what the Journal could do for you. It's now easier to get the Journal to help you. Get 8 weeks of the Wall Street Journal for just 37 cents a day. That's 50% off the regular rate. Call 800-544-6400. That's 800-544-6400 for the Wall Street Journal.
May good fortune be with you. May your guiding light be strong. And may sunshine and happiness surround you when you're far from home. But whatever road you choose, I'm right behind you, win or lose. Forever young, forever young.
I wasted way too much time being fat. I would go up and down and up and down. Look at me. I lost over 50 pounds on this Slim Fast plan, and I kept it off for over 3 years. I didn't know I looked like this underneath. It's not only about being thin, it's about feeling good and having energy. I exercise, I eat right. I have a shake for lunch every day. It helps me stay this way. If you know your ABCs, you know the vitamins in Slim Fast. It's a fun way of rejuvenating your body.
Slim Fast, every day. Get healthy.
It can happen to you.
Before you see another doctor,
Your husband died of cardiac arrest a few hours ago.
see this.
A patient comes in healthy, we send him out dead.
You're having a heart attack.
You made a mistake.
You left the patient. You left the patient? Yes. Did you care about this patient? Yes. Then why didn't you fight for him?
All new Gideon's Crossing. ABC Wednesday, 10/9 Central.
You gotta fabricate a new motive.
Richard Bay will cheat.
You snapped. You hit her from behind.
I never objection.
He's going down again, this time with nothing to appeal.
That's all. You have to leave.
At all new practice, ABC Sunday, 10/9 Central.
The 2000 vote continues live. Once again, Peter Jennings.
When you're looking at Austin, Texas, and they're rather subdued at the moment, that's because they're waiting for Mr. Bush, and we're waiting for Mr. Gore, too, who we believe will show up sooner than Mr. Bush, obviously, with his vice presidential candidate, Joe Lieberman. There'll be some question tonight about how Mr. Lieberman actually delivered, but it's been common wisdom and witnessed on the campaign, of course, that Mr. Lieberman gave Mr. Gore a tremendous amount of energy. Though if you looked at the last 36 hours of this campaign and other all-nighters that Mr. Gore has pulled, that work ethic that you've heard so many people talk about tonight, Mr. Lieberman, and certainly Mr. Gore's wife, Tipper, gave him tremendous energy throughout the campaign. I want to go straight away to Dean Reynolds, who is still outside the State House tonight. Dean, Mr. Bush denied it throughout the campaign repeatedly that he was intent on avenging his father's loss, but it must be sweet for the whole family.
No question about it, Peter. And you know, yesterday when they wound up this campaign, where were they? They campaigned in Tennessee and they campaigned in Arkansas, even going so far as to play the Clinton theme song at the beginning of the rally. So yes, I think there was a little payback in all of this.
Okay. Now, do you agree with us that he's going to wait for Mr. Gore, but he does plan to come out and talk to his supporters? Have been there throughout the evening?
Evidently, yeah. I mean, many of his top staff have shown up as well, and I don't think they would have left the comforts of the headquarters to brave the elements here if they didn't think the governor was going to come out.
Okay, I want to go back to this Florida vote because we made so much of it this evening and ask our director, Roger Goodman, who's done a great job for us this evening, to put up the popular vote in Florida again, because David Leahy of the Miami-Dade Elections Department told us a short while ago on the record that there were about 38,500 votes in the county, Mark Halperin, which were not yet reported, were contested, were worried about, or were in the county.
Well, it's a little unclear at this point. I wish I could tell you. I'm actually talking to an election lawyer right now trying to get to the bottom of the more basic question that Al Gore faces, which is, does he press this? Does he press the notion of that there should be a recount, whether the automatic recount law kicks in or not? Okay, well, let me just say what Mr. Leahy of the Miami-Dade, I'll let you proceed with that. I apologize. That what David Leahy of the Miami-Dade Elections Department said, he said that Cuban Americans, this is really for you, George, Cuban Americans have been raising the conservative presence. Now, what makes me focus on that for a minute takes us back to Elian Gonzalez and Al Gore, and whether or not, as several of us, Linda Douglas included this evening, thought Mr. Gore was pandering at the time.
Well, he certainly got accused of it. He would, of course, say that his position was consistent all along.
Which it wasn't.
He would say that it had to be considered by the family courts. I think we can probably adjudicate that at another time. But it's true, and it might have shown, though, that he was thinking about Florida from the very beginning at some level. He knew how important this state would be in the end. But remember also that Hispanic community in Florida is bigger than the Cuban community now. Puerto Rican, Dominican Republic, Venezuelan, Colombian. It's gotten much broader, and Al Gore was winning far more support from that group in the Hispanic community than from the Cubans.
Now, we can't tell it tonight because I don't think we asked people in the Cuban community, Cuban-American community coming out actually what age they were particularly. But the Cuban vote in itself has been split. Cuban opinion has been divided, often on older and younger generation.
That's right, but it's still basically a Republican vote right now on national elections, also certainly in local elections in Miami. My guess is that it was going to be a very small percentage of the vote no matter what, and if there was any political calculation at all, I actually believe it had far more to do with his primary fight against Bill Bradley than anything happening now.
Now, somewhere in our control room, I know have a picture of Karl Rove, because when we come to Florida again, George, or we stay with Florida, we know that Karl Rove is regarded in his party, in both parties, as a brilliant organizer. He'll be the giant of the evening as all the second guessing goes on among political professionals. But he apparently has done a very good organizing job with the absentee ballots, I'm told.
Absolutely. They paid an awful lot of attention to that. And as of just a few days before the election, there were more than 100,000 more absentee requests from Republicans than from Democrats in Florida. And of course, he'll get an awful lot of credit for running a disciplined campaign, a well-organized campaign. And, you know, on the other side, I think people will say, listen, 50,000 votes in Florida, and the Al Gore people are geniuses. 50,000 votes here for George Bush. Karl Rove is the genius of this evening.
And that's a picture of Karl Rove, who we're all very familiar with. It is quite stunning. I think we were all struck by this from the very beginning of how closely held the Republican campaign was held by basically three or four people.
The Iron Triangle.
All right.
Joe Alba, the campaign manager, Karen Hughes, Governor Bush's communications director, and Karl Rove, the chief strategist, and of course his campaign chairman, Don Evans, who is a very close friend of George W. Bush. Let's see if they will now replicate that as Governor Bush tries to put together his White House staff. And I think they are well aware that they can help continue the success of the campaign if they appoint a White House staff quickly.
Thanks very much. Now I want to introduce you to two people. Their families have certainly waited up this late at long because we're one of the few, we're certainly the only television news organizations that had a correspondent with both of these campaigns since the very beginning. We call them off-air reporters. They don't appear on television very much, but day after day after day, they are the ones who push into us at all points in this news division what's really happening on the inside of those campaigns, and it's time for you to hear from them. I want to go first to Dana Hill, who has been with the Gore campaign from the very beginning. Dana, nice to see you. You've done a fabulous job for us for the last couple of years. Just give us your thoughts to start with.
Well, clearly tonight I think is a very, very dispiriting night for the Gore campaign and all throughout the campaign that we've been talking to throughout the year, you know, this is one of those losses that has to be especially dispiriting for those who work on the ground level, who try to get that one extra vote per precinct, as Al Gore tried to call on people to do throughout the campaign, because it came down to one vote per precinct, and it came down to such a close race.
Now, Dana, did you keep in your notebook as these final days wound down what you thought there were mistakes might be that Mr. Gore was making?
You know, there's going to be second guessing in all quarters. You have to realize that in a campaign like this, where you have literally one vote per precinct this close an election, there has to be some realization that both campaigns probably ran a pretty good campaign and probably ran a campaign that succeeded on a lot of levels, even though one got more votes than the other did.
And when you were talking to the Gore campaign in these final hours, did you begin to pick up what was going to happen?
It was such a roller coaster ride that you began to pick up one vibe, then you began to pick up another vibe, and then you began to pick up the opposite of that vibe. Because the minute they learned that they thought they were going to win New Mexico, that they won New Mexico, then they thought that they were in. And then suddenly, when they learned that Florida was going to be called the other direction, then suddenly it threw everything into chaos.
And you've made so many trips to so many places in the course of this year, Dana. Tennessee did not, I assume, come as a surprise to you?
Tennessee, yes, you know, I think it's especially difficult for Al Gore to have to lose his home state here 30 years after his father lost it here, and since he lost his home state here in Tennessee. And, you know, it is at the end of all of Al Gore's speeches, he'll talk about a gloomy day, a rainy day, when there'll be a loss, and you'll have to read in the newspapers that George Bush won. It's especially fitting here tonight that is so rainy, so gloomy, and that the headlines tomorrow will read just a fuzzy impression that Bush won.
I realize we're now, Dana, involved in speculation minute by minute, but do you have some sense from the campaign staff as to what Mr. Gore might say at the moment?